And I said to them, well, you guys go around the amphitheater on this side, and I'll go around the other way, and we'll just see if we can find a way down. Because sometimes you'll have one of those joints I've been talking about, and you can chimney down one of those joints, and that's what we're kind of looking for. And about 20 minutes later, I was being really careful because underneath the snow there was a little thin layer of ice with that snow melting, and it was flowing off into the canyon. And I was about 30 feet away from the edge, but I was in an area that just had a really gradual slope, maybe 3% slope. And I started to slide to the edge of that canyon, that 600-foot cliff. And I got down on all fours, and I was just digging in with my fingers, trying to slow my descent. And I slowed myself down enough so I wasn't launched over the cliff, but I slid down the face of the cliff. I went over the cliff, and I landed on a ledge that was about 6 inches wide, 10 feet down from the top. And if you've ever had a really, really frightening experience, you'll know what I'm talking about. But what happens is your body flushes all this adrenaline into your system, and you just shake. You shake violently, and you can't stop. I mean, because it's the adrenaline that's in you, and you can't talk. That's another really weird thing, because you know you can't talk, you can't scream for help or anything, and it takes about 30 minutes for that to wear off until you stop shaking. And then I stopped shaking. I had to decide whether to go right or left on that little tiny ledge. And I was able to I decided to go left. I worked my way down that ledge about 150 feet, and I finally found a little crack that I could just get my fingers in, and I was able to climb back up to the top of the cliff there. So that's the story about me falling over a 600-foot cliff and surviving. It happened just out here to the right of the bus. That's where it happened. And this is the weirdest thing, but for about 26 years, I was not able to talk about it. I mean, even my kids didn't know about it. I mean, I couldn't talk about it. And the first, decade after, when I finally could talk about it, I would get really emotional, and it was really hard to talk about. But there's still things that happened later on that trip that were even more frightening that I still can't talk about. So
how did you do for food? What'd you break?
Well, for food, they actually gave us a cup of flour a week. And you can imagine how filling that would be. So with a cup of flour a week, you could get about 3 little silver dollar sized ash cakes. And an ash cake, you mix flour and water and a little ash from the fire, and that causes it to rise a little bit. So they're like tortillas. And you get about 3 silver dollar ones a week. So right here on the right, well, it's empty right now. There's a little water tank over here. Sometimes we call them guzzlers or water tanks. I don't see it now. It's filled up with sand. But that's where we drank out of these little potholes that you find in the Navajo sandstone. Oh, you saw one?
Yeah.
That's full of water. Yeah, that's where we drank. We drank out of those. And we didn't have canteens or anything, so you'd hike until you found one of those, and then you just tank up. That's what we called it, tank up. You drink as much as you can, and then you go till you find another one. So, but in the Navajo sandstone, there's a lot of these little depressions that'll fill up with water after a rainstorm, and some of them hold, tens of thousands of gallons of water. Some of them are huge, massive, and other ones are just tiny ones. So the area we're going to tomorrow, Capitol Reef, the reef itself is called the Water Pocket Fold. And it's called the Water Pocket Fold because it's in the Navajo sandstone, and you find these little water pockets, that like we drank out of. And one day, it was about 30 miles south of here, maybe 40 miles south of here. We hiked for 24 hours without water. I mean, we didn't have any water for 24 hours. We couldn't find any, and it was across a place called the Plains of Egypt. And I finally found this little pothole. It was only about a foot wide, but it was deep. It had about 8 or 9 inches of water in it. And so I ran over there, and I'm just drinking, and everybody saw me. They came running over and started drinking. And then I started laughing at them, and they said, "McMahon, what are you laughing at?" And I said, "Well, look in the bottom of that pothole. In the bottom of the pothole, there was about that much rabbit turds." But I'm telling you, it was the best water I've ever had in my whole life. Seriously, it was. It saved our lives because we were so dehydrated. My tongue felt like a piece of leather.
What did you do for the diarrhea?
We never got sick once from the water. We drank out of potholes. We drank out of rivers. We drank wherever we could find water.
Go back and tell us what else you ate.
Okay, what else we ate? So this is in March, and it's cold, and it's snow. So all the animals were hibernating. Yeah. There wasn't even a lizard out to eat. I mean, I would have gladly ate a lizard, but there weren't there. And so the only thing that was available were cactuses. And back in those days, this is in mid-70s, if you read any of the edible plant books, they all say cactuses are edible. Well, I'm here to tell you that's a lie. Not all cactuses are edible, and now there's been a lot of research on them. Some of them actually contain really bad alkaloids that'll kill your liver, and you don't want to kill your liver.
No.
Yeah, so we were lucky though. There was one cactus out here that I ate called the claret cup, and it grows in a clump, so you'll have it has a beautiful red flower on it. So we picked a bunch of those and peeled them. You got to peel them because there's little tiny spines on there that you can't see. You either peel them or burn them off in the fire, but usually we just peel them with a knife, and then you'd eat it. And the claret cup made us all really sick, and there were people hallucinating. There was a girl that sat in the fire. We had to pull her out of the fire. And it made us really sick. So don't ever eat claret cup. But the only thing I would eat that I know is safe is prickly pear. And there's not a lot of prickly pear here. You'd think there would be, but there's not. So we would eat a little bit of that. And again, you have to peel it because of those little tiny spines. I learned the hard way. This is the Escalante River right here, right in front of us, and all those trees down in the bottom there, most of them are all Fremont cottonwood trees. And this is just a phenomenal place. I mean, I pinned my heart over here. And I come back every year. I've hiked over 1,000 miles through here, well over 1,000 miles. I've hiked every single canyon here except for probably 4 or 5. And I'm going to do another one this fall with my kids. So yeah, this is the Escalante River here.
Where's the water?
So let me tell you about cactus. It tastes exactly like cucumbers with a whole bunch of Elmer's glue on it. So if you like Elmer's glue and cucumbers, then you'll like cactus. One time I came over this bridge right here. This goes over the Escalante, and it looked like there was the tail of a plane hanging up on the bridge there. And I said to the coordinator, it wasn't Paula, yeah, this is where the other side of the Escalante, from Escalante, the town of Escalante. It's about 16 miles through there. Anyways, I said that looked like a plane, the tail of a plane. And we get up here, we were going to hike Calf Creek Falls. It was actually a road scholar trip, and there was no power at the campground, and nobody could figure out why there wasn't any power. Well, we found out later that was a plane, and there were 2 dead people in it.
Oh.
When we went by, they had hit a power line. They were flying really low down the canyon and hit a power line that goes across the Escalante River there and crashed right there. So, and it was a guy that used to have a ranch up here at Boulder, the town of Boulder. He was a doctor from Southern California, but in his weekends and stuff, he'd come up here and do a little bit of ranching. Well, do you have any other questions about my survival trip?
What happened to the 2 guys you were looking after? Did they learn to make a fire?
Oh, those 2 kids, they never learned to make a fire.
So what did they do the week they were on their own?
They're on their own. They just kept someone made a fire and they just kept it going. Yeah. It's pretty easy to keep a fire going if
someone starts to.
Yeah.
How many people were in the group?
Oh, how many people? We started with 20 and we ended up with 16. We ate 4.
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah. Yep, it does. No, they were right at the very beginning. The first 3 days, they call it impact. So the first 3 days, you're just supposed to hike and you're not supposed to talk. And so after the first 3 days, there were these 4 girls that couldn't take it any longer, and they decided to leave. By that time, we were clear down by Highway 89, 389, that cuts across the Arizona Strip, and we could actually see lights down there from where we were camped, and they kept begging me to take them out, and I didn't want to be responsible for them leaving the trip, so I finally talked them into talking to one of the leaders, and they gave them a ride out, but they were just going to leave and not tell anyone. Yeah, but it was a trip that, really changed my life, who I am today. I feel like I could go anywhere in the world and survive. I don't feel like with the skills I learned on that trip, not only about, building fires and stuff, but also about myself. It's really amazing what you can do as a human being. When I started, I was in the best shape of my life. I weighed 155 pounds, and when I got back, I weighed 125 pounds. I lost all muscle mass. I had no fat on me. I had less than 5% fat when I started. So, it was all muscle mass. It just, it gave me, I think, a better appreciation for the Native Americans that, walked through this land. And that Escalante River there is just laced with all kinds of petroglyphs and ruins. And 4 miles up from the bridge there's a really nice ruin up there, Anasazi Cliff Dwelling. And there's a few down in here too. There's one in that little canyon right there to the left. It's a small one though, it's only like 3 houses. This is called Calf Creek off to the left of us here. And they called it Calf Creek because the cowboys, they would just put their calves in there and they'd fence off the mouth of it, and then they'd come back in the fall and they'd be all fattened up and they'd take them out then. But there's the largest waterfall in Utah is down there. It's 139 feet tall. It's called Calf Creek Falls. And there's 2 of them. There's the lower and the upper. That one's the lower one. And then there's another one just up here about a mile up the road. It's called Upper Calf Creek Falls. And it's a really neat, beautiful falls too, but it's only about 80 feet high. And right above it, there's some great big pools that are really neat to look at. So this road, I bought a t-shirt over here in Boulder about 7 years ago, and it says on it, "Life is too short to drive roads with guardrails." And this road didn't until last year, it didn't used to have a single guardrail on it. And I don't know if you can imagine driving a school bus over this in the wintertime with snow. That would be a fun drive. Because it didn't have there were some cement guardrails back there. They weren't there. I mean, they weren't. And I know there's been 2 vehicles that have gone over there and killed the people in it. But about 8 years ago, 2 of my kids, Forrest and Brooke, they came over here backpacking off of the Burr Trail, and they hiked up to this great big huge arch over there called Laminate Arch. But on their way back home, they came down this road here, and there's places up here where it drops off on both sides, you know, almost 1,000 feet down to the bottom there. And they came around a curve, and there was a truck that had flipped over in the middle of the road, right in the middle of the road. It was just a, you know, a little Ford Ranger, had a camper shell on it, but there were like beer cans scattered everywhere. And they got up there, and the kid crawled out, and he said, "Help me pick up all these beer cans before the cops come." And he was really drunk. They said he could hardly stand up. Can you imagine driving this road drunk? You haven't even seen the worst of it yet. This is why, this is the day that Harry earns his money. Yeah, you see this guardrail? These weren't here until last year. The one right here on the left. So anyways, the rest of the story,
down there.
that kid, he had a dog with him, and the dog's name was Lucky. I was thinking, he wasn't the only one lucky that day. Because he started to go off the road, and then, you know, what always happens, he overcorrected and rolled the truck, so. I'll show you where it was. It's about a mile up the road where he flipped the truck over.
Did they get all the beer off the road?
I don't think they helped him pick those cans up. But they said it was kind of interesting because he was a local here, and when the cop came, it was like they were best friends. Which, you know, I guess they were, but... So, if you look out to the right, you'll see these boulders. See all these rounded, dark boulders? I want you to figure out where they came from, how they got here, and where they're going to go after this life is over. Those are the things you need to think about. But look at them, look at the shape of them, look at the color of them, the texture of them, and, you know, I think you'll be able to figure it out, because we'll talk about it tomorrow. So when we get down into Captain Reef, we're going to see these again. But I wanted you to look at them here, because they're all scattered all over in this area. I'm really hoping that you guys will stay up all night studying and trying to figure out the answer to this. Okay, so this is getting where you don't have guardrails on both sides. It drops off.
Stay awake, Harry.
Get Harry a cup of coffee.
I'm trying to take a nap. I don't even need Rockstar for this.
You're my favorite person.
Harry is an excellent driver. We're lucky that we have him. I shouldn't tell you this story, but we had this one lady, and they were actually putting that guardrail in. That was a year ago. And so they had a whole row of cones right down the middle here, and she hit every single cone. Like 250 of them. It was just boom, boom, boom. And she says, "I'm not moving over. I'm just going to hit these cones." And she did. Anyways, that was the last trip she'd go for us. So right here on this curve, this is where the truck flipped over.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Very nice.
It makes the hair in my back of my neck stand up. Think about that.
Drunkard's Curve.
Yeah. So there's a little ridge over here to the left, about 10 o'clock, that goes all the way down to the river. And right at the point there, that's where the Upper Calf Creek Falls is located. So if you ever come back, I mean, it's really spectacular to see that. So you see all these little green ribbons down through there. They're pretty neat little riparian areas. Full of water, full of fish. A lot of these have fish in them. This one on the right does, and the one on the left does. And the next three streams off to the left also have fish in them. So there's a lady that was raised over here in this next little town. This next little town is the most isolated town in America. It was the last town to get mail service, it was the last town to get electricity, and it was the last town in America to get phone service. This one right here in front of us, Boulder, Utah. The only way in was on this road. Originally this road wasn't even here. This was built fairly recently, and they called it the hogback. So the way they got the mail in is they took it overland off to the left here. It's called the Old Mail Trail down to the town of Escalante, and they bring it in by mule, and that's how they got their mail. They got it 3 times a week by mule. And the same with like milk and supplies like that. It was brought over from Escalante by mule. And so there wasn't a road that went off to the north. That road was built in 1994 is when it was built. I was actually on it when it wasn't even paved yet. They were just building the dirt road in 94. I was working over here as a botanist, doing a study, long-term range trend study for the state of Utah. But anyways, so it's a really isolated spot. And back 900 years ago, when the Native Americans lived here, there were 200 people that lived here in this area, in this little community here. We're going to go to a museum there that's called Anasazi State Park, and out behind there's some structures, some Anasazi structures. So there were 200 people that lived there then, and today it's the same number, 200.